Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 59 of Generation GC. My name's Molly Huddleston. I'm your host, producer, creator, and editor of this show. Today, we're talking about Emotionless from the Young and the Hopeless, and my guest is Angelo Gargaro of Spinning Thoughts. Last week, we talked about Seasons from Good Charlotte, and next week, we'll be talking about a song from the Chronicles of Life and Death. Spinning Thoughts is dedicated to supporting and lifting up the music community with inclusive content, in-depth band interviews, exclusive new music premieres, audio versions of album reviews, and more. Hosted by Angelo Gargaro with contributions from many of his friends from around the world, Spinning Thoughts seeks to inspire others and embrace the ethos to share music, spread love. Angelo and I connected online, almost 4 years ago now. I was getting ready to interview Frito, who had just put out their album, Bear Your Mind, and I was searching to see just what other interviews the band had done recently, and one of them was Spinning Thoughts. It was a great interview. Spinning Thoughts is a great show, so we've just kind of kept in touch with the internet ever since, and, I really think that anyone who's a fan of Generation GC, who is a fan of Good Charlotte, and just their whole ethos of being yourself and just being expressive and authentic, I really think you could get on board with Spinning Thoughts' mission of discovery and promoting the music that they enjoy. I wanted to mention that I love having guests from all around the world and from all different backgrounds on this show. If English isn't your first language, that's okay. As long as you're comfortable holding a conversation with me in English, you're good to go. For the past several months, coming up pretty close to a year now since the protests were first happening last June, I've been advocating for Black Lives Matter in the intros. And then I added a couple months later a mention about anti-Semitism. But unfortunately, there hasn't been until pretty recently enough attention drawn to the incredible amount of anti-Asian racism and anti-Asian hate crime that's happening all over the U.S. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. It's really upsetting just how unfortunately common that is nowadays. So I'm adding also a mention to visit anti-asianviolenceresources.card.co to learn more. That's going to be linked in the show notes as well. And that's going to have more statistics for you, as well as resources to educate yourselves and info on how to actually be an ally. On a positive note, I want to remind everyone that Generation GC is turning 1 year old on April 15th, and I'm throwing a birthday party over on Zoom. So the link will be in the show notes. You can visit bit.ly/GenGC-party. And if you haven't already, please join the Generation GC fam Facebook group. I'll post updates in there too. We'll bake brownies. We'll talk about the book Good Charlotte. I'll be doing a giveaway too of some custom Generation GC mugs. Finally, Generation GC stickers are here. If you do want a sticker, there are 2 things you can do. Number 1, you can support the show on Anchor, anchor.fm/GenerationGCPod, and click support. All of that money goes right back into helping me make the show the best that it can be, whether that's headphones, microphone cables, laptop stand, printing and shipping the stickers, and it really makes a difference. Number 2, you can make a charitable donation. Continuing in the line of what I suggested last week and encouraging folks to donate to people who don't have enough to eat, I want to encourage everyone this week to donate to Heart of Dinner, which is an organization that feeds elderly Asian folks in need in New York City who are facing food insecurity and isolation, and I think it's a really incredible organization, so you can visit heartofdinner.org. Then you're going to take a screenshot of your support of the show on Anchor or your donation to Heart of Dinner, and you're going to send that to me along with your mailing address. You can message me on socials at GenerationGCPod, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or you can email generationgcpod@gmail.com. And also just, keep up on socials. I sometimes will post other things on socials that y'all can do to either promote the show, get the word out there about Generation GC, or just other ways you can get involved that would help you win stickers. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and now on to episode 59.
All right, so Emotionless. This one is track 13 on The Young and the Hopeless, Good Charlotte's second album released in 2002. Track 12 was The Young and the Hopeless, the title track, and then track 14 ends the album with Moving On. It was not a single, no radio play or chart notes to mention, but they have played it live a fair bit. Setlist.fm ranks it number 25 of their most played songs with 45 plays recorded. Who knows what happened outside of that? They played it a bunch in 2003 and 2011, it looks like. And they also played it in 2016 and 17, but it doesn't seem they've played it since. I don't think I've ever heard this song live. And we have a whole lot to talk about with Emotionless, Angelo, but first, I want to help our guests get to know you. So the first question I like to ask is, when did you first hear Good Charlotte, and what were your first thoughts on them?
Well, Molly, first of all, thank you for having me on. I'm
Yes.
really excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this. You're so proactive in your approach. Like, I just love everything that you've done. You're so organized. So kudos to you. I've been looking forward to this. When it comes to Good Charlotte, honestly, they're one of the first bands I remember listening to like in middle school. One of the transformations for me, really, the first band I remember was MXPX. I had a friend like get me into them.
Well, that's a fair that's fair then. Yes.
Fair jump, right? From MXPX to Good Charlotte. But seriously, it was so early in like my music exploration as a kid that it really impacted me, even to the extent of like how I dressed. I mean, I was wearing the eyeliner, the Liberty Spikes and stuff.
Yes, the Liberty Spikes!
Seriously, there's probably pictures floating around, just madness of how I looked in middle school and high school. But the first song I ever heard was, the Motivation Proclamation.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's track 3 on the debut. So that one got me kind of into it. The Little Things, obviously, like that was like such a rad song. That was actually one of the first songs I ever learned on bass and played in my first band. Like we covered it. So that's where the memories really kind of start. But the Young and the Hopeless was just the banger, and had so much diversity on it, in my opinion, on, pop punk songs to really heartfelt ones and everything in between. So that's where it all started.
Yeah, I like what you said about the diversity of this album, because that's something that keeps coming up and that like I appreciate more and more over time, is the diverse sounds and the diverse emotions and everything that's going on this whole album.
And I'm sure we'll talk about this as we look into some of the, critical reviews and whatnot that you have prepared. This album seems to have gotten a lot of hate on the surface because I think that critics looked at some of those, jokey kind of songs or whatever, and then skipped everything else. And if you don't do that and you really listen, even to the intro track, like who was doing that in the early 2000s with an intro track like that? They didn't get enough credit.
Yeah. And it's just like, if you look at a song that's sarcastic as this is how they genuinely feel versus, oh, they're trying to make commentary. Yeah, like things will get lost in translation. So I also like to ask people, have you ever seen Good Charlotte live?
This question was really something that I had to ponder over, and it makes me crazy my answer is I don't remember.
Really?
Like I feel like I had to have seen them. Like I feel like I had to, because they really were such an important band to me in my middle and high school years. I mean, they went on a hiatus at some point and I kind of went on a hiatus with them, with Good Charlotte at that point. But I don't remember a specific time seeing them, but I swear I probably had to. But it's sad that I can't remember.
For sure. Well, so you're from the Pittsburgh area, correct? Have you always lived there?
Born and raised right outside of the city. I went to college at Kent State University in Ohio, right outside of like Akron. Are you familiar?
I'm extremely familiar. I just posted a picture on Twitter of me at a show at Euro Gyro. I went there all the time. I went to Case Western in Cleveland.
Oh my God, Euro Gyro. I just got really hungry, like immediately hungry.
So hungry.
Holy shit, that place. I mean, that was like the DIY place at Kent. There were so many of those. The Outpost was one that I really liked.
Yes, the Outpost.
Robin Hood is no longer in existence. They smashed that to the ground. It broke my heart. I actually went back right to campus before they tore it down. I mean, those places, the Kent stage is still there, but they're fighting to stay alive because of, the world we're living in. That's crazy. Euro Gyro.
Oh my God, yeah.
I used to love their food. Oh my God.
I know. I remember like I went vegan around the time I graduated college and kind of mourning. And I still think about this, that like one of the only things I miss is like Euro Gyro pizza. I'm like, I couldn't go back and eat their pizza.
That's so crazy that you have a connection though to Kent State. I mean, Kent State like was another, just time in my life where like music really, impacted me. That place, the culture around Kent State and Cleveland, the music scene around Cleveland.
So good.
It bangs. It bangs. Such a great place.
Wait, so I have to ask now that we're talking about this, favorite show that you saw in Kent while you were there? Favorite like local show?
Okay, so I saw Red Sun Rising.
Okay.
Are you familiar with them? Mm-hmm. They're like on the harder side. Red Sun Rising is, I think they just quit or went on a hiatus like within the last year.
Okay.
They're like one of the best bands that have come out of like the Cleveland area in that genre. I mean, they were headlining like big fests like alongside of like, other hard rock genre bands. So I'd say them. I'm trying to think of another one. There was just so many that came out of, and we played venues that what I loved about Cleveland and the scene there is like I was in a ska band. I was in a ska band for over 10 years. We just recently stopped playing music and we all went to Kent State. And so we played at like Pirates Cove or whatever in Cleveland, which is like a metal venue. So here we are like a legitimate ska band. We had at one point 11 people in our band. 11, that's how many people
That's
we
how
had.
you know it's a legit ska band, yeah.
3 different horns and it was ridiculous. So anyways, when it comes to like the band that I saw Red Sun Rising rise to their fame. So it was pretty cool.
Love that. So we connected on the internet back in 2017. And I remember this super well because I was getting ready to interview Corey Castro from Free Throw. And you had just done this podcast with them. And I was like, wait, oh my gosh, like this podcast is so great. Let me check out everything else they've done. But Spinning Thoughts is not just you. Like you have a whole team of contributors. So can you talk for our audience just about how you've built that team and how everyone works together?
Yeah, Spinning Thoughts is one of my most proudest things I've ever done. And it was the most random thing I've ever done. And so, I would just encourage anybody right now just listening, if anything that you want to do artistically, creatively, or professionally, or anything you want to do in your life, just fucking go and do it. Just go and do it and have confidence in doing it. And I mean, I don't always admit it, but I know Spinning Thoughts impacts on people. And it's because of the many people I have on my team.
Yeah.
Right? We have 2 in Canada. We have the other 8 to 9 here in the States. At one point, Spinning Thoughts had 25 active contributors.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
It was wild. It became a revolving door to an extent. And so we've honed in a little bit on it. But
I mean, that's kind of the nature of it,
I really just want to be as inclusive as I possibly can, right? And so at one point I was just like, yo, if anybody's into this, let's just fucking do it. And then it became a little crazy and I couldn't keep up with it. But when I first started Spinning Thoughts, it was, I think in 2016. And the reason why I did it, this will lead to why I have contributors, I promise. But when I first started doing it, there's this 4-chord music festival, if you're familiar, Molly.
Oh, yeah.
And my good boy, my good friend, like he's a dog, but my good friend, Rishi Ball from Eternal Boy puts this on with 4-chord music. He's just one of the most like DIY hard-working individuals in the scene. He lifts up the Pittsburgh music scene. Anyways, my band at the time wasn't invited to play on 4 chords. So Rishi, screw you. And I decided, hey, I want to still be involved with this festival. If my band can't play on it, I'm just going to make a podcast, pretend like we've done this for years and just tell all the bands to come and be on our show and let me interview them. I interviewed like Keep Flying, The Dangerous Summer. I mean, I literally were just telling these bands like, yeah, we've been doing this for years. I mean, I wasn't like lying, but I was just like, we're the biggest podcast in Pittsburgh. And so what happened was, though, we started getting some names on the show. And then other bands were like, okay, well, I guess if, Free Throw, as you said, or Keep Flying or Eternal Boy's on, why can't the Bouncing Souls? Why can't Less Than Jake? And it just kind of kept going. But what I found very quickly was I was getting lonely doing this. Like I just was lonely. You probably can relate a little bit from doing all of the interviewing, the researching, the post-pro, the marketing, pushing it out. Like it's a solo effort, And so I wanted to bring more people on to just not feel so lonely and to make the biggest impact. And really, I am just a straight white guy. Like I can only provide so much insight and perspective.
Yeah.
And this scene is so diverse that I feel like I just would not be doing it much of a service if it was just my voice. And that's how we kind of got here. And these people on Spinning Thoughts are my fucking family. I love them. I love them so much. They're amazing. Go check them out. Everybody writes amazingly.
I love that. And I think it's good to focus on diversity. And something like I'll even admit myself is, look, I've had plenty of female guests, plenty of non-male guests on this show, just being off the fact that Good Charlotte has a largely non-male fan base. But I've also realized that, and I've had a few LGBT folks on the show, but I've also realized that, I've had a very large portion of white people as my guests, and I really would like to expand, and, I want to have people of all different backgrounds,
It's so important for people like you and me and what we do, right?
Yes,
it's regardless of the demographics that you come from. If you have a platform, especially these days, you just have to fucking use it for good. Whether you're in a band, whether you're podcasting, one of the things I love about your podcast, Molly, that I need to do better at Spinning Thoughts is, you mentioned at the beginning of your shows, places to support and donate, or, that's amazing. I'm not doing that here. I should be doing that here. That's awesome. And so I agree. I'm trying my best to get more people of color on my show. Some podcasters or those who are outside of the demographic, they get afraid to say that they want to bring people in. Just say it. Let's build this community up together. I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, I love asking this, and I've had a couple other podcasters on this show and a couple other that I'm going to in the future, perhaps, maybe. I won't spill anything. But I love asking this. What are some bucket list guests for you?
Yeah. First of all, I've already knocked off a few, which that's crazy to me. So I want to start just the number one bucket list guest for me is gone already. So it was Kenny Vasoli from the Starting Line. The Starting Line is one of my top 5 favorite bands ever, and I am really into the 60s and 70s too. I put the Starting Line up there. The Beatles are probably my favorite band.
I see that some Beatles artwork on the wall there.
I get a lot of people that always comment on it, and I love the 60s, the 70s, and then pop punk, and so I put the Starting Line in there with Pink Floyd, the Beatles, the Velvet Underground. So Kenny Vasoli was one of my favorite guests. Funny story about him though. Kenny, when I had him on, it was for a 4-chord interview. He's a big stoner, if for those who don't know.
I did not know.
Oh, you didn't? So a huge stoner, and he has a side project called Vacationer, and it is just
I've heard of Vacationer. I didn't realize that was him.
Vacationer is amazing. I have so many of their vinyl. It's so vibey and Cynthian stuff. So and they even have Kenny has his own strain of marijuana. He's big into it, right? So here I am thinking, okay, I've got Kenny, one of my favorite fucking bands and idols in the scene. He's a big stoner. I'm going to get high before, interviewing him. I have to. Kenny's going to be high. So, I get stoned and stuff, and Kenny comes on the line, and I go, Kenny, dude, before we start taping, we should take a rip. He's like, oh, no, dude, I'm totally sober today. I was like, what?
Oh, my God.
And he's like, yeah, man, I don't got any. I was like, Kenny, I'm high as hell right now. How is it that you're not going to be high with me? And so that's kind of how we set it went well, but
good.
So Kenny was the bucket list, but I'll tell you, Patty Walters from As It Is. I talked to Tim McTeague from Under Oath. Those are bands that just amazing. I'm really looking, I really want to get, Burt McCracken would be the top one for me right now. It was probably Kenny and then Burt. I would
Bert,
be
nervous. If you're listening, you should go on Spinning Thoughts.
I would be fucking nervous. I don't know why, but Bert would make me nervous to talk to him. I just really look up to him. The U's are amazing. Other than that, I really want to also get Meet Me at the Altar on the show big time.
Would be so sick. Yeah, I would. I'm trying to get them on this show too. Would be incredible.
One of us is bound to. One of us is bound to.
Yes, or not, or both. Who knows?
There we go.
Well, let's dive into Emotionless because we got a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah.
So I reached out to you. It was several months ago. And you mentioned that you were interested in talking about Emotionless, although there was some initial confusing over whether you meant the demo track that's actually called Hey Dad, And you're not the only person that I've messaged that's had that same mix-up. So why did you want to talk about this song in particular?
Well, first, you were flexing your muscles right out the gate by with that correction. And no joke, Molly, my entire life of hearing this, always thought, I own the CD, I'm staring at it right now on Apple Music. It does not say, "Hey, Dad." But I always thought that was the damn title. And even leading up to us talking, I did my in-depth research that, Spinning Thoughts is known for. And I still just there's so much confusion on the internet on what this title is. So I really appreciated right out the gate that, what you're talking about, which obviously with Good Charlotte. The reason why I wanted to talk about this song, to be honest with you, it, basically every lyric in that song happened to me. I relate to every single thing. My father left, I have an older sister, younger brother. My, father left in 2001. This song came out, I'm going off memory. Maybe 2002. Seriously, it couldn't have come at a more perfect time. Think about it this way. There's Benji and Joel, brothers. So I have a brother. We both played music together. In my bands, my brother would come on stage and fill in if somebody couldn't join, he played bass. So I felt that connection. My sister, they mention a sister in the lyrics. That song, you hear people say, there's even compilations, songs that saved my life. This would be mine. This one saved my life. It is, it's just such a powerful song. The vulnerability in it is immense for a band that didn't get credit all the time and even kind of hated on when they opened up. But it saved me. This song fucking saved me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really good point that you have about the getting hated on for their vulnerability. I think people talk about emotional vulnerability as sharing yourself, right? Sharing often the negative emotions, right? Sharing exactly what's on your mind, what you've been through, what you felt. But the side effect of that is that you open yourself up to harm, to people going, "Oh, well, these are your wounds. Let me get in there," right? But I feel like they never let that stop them.
It's inspiring, really.
Yeah. And in regards to the track that's called "Hey Dad," I do feel like it's a different track, but very clearly related. and I think in some ways maybe kind of a precursor. Let's talk about, I guess, what this song means. What is your interpretation of the lyrics?
Yeah, for me personally, it's a story about kids trying to just figure out why this is happening to them.
Yeah.
And how to just sort out the feelings and not be too angry, but to recognize that there's certainly anger there. You mentioned something in our notes here that we have heading into this conversation about almost the irony of the song being called Emotionless. I won't jump, I guess, ahead here, but there's just so much emotion in this song. And part of me hearing it, because again, these lyrics, so I feel like I literally, Good Charlotte took my hand and wrote lyrics from my brain, with not taking credit, right? I feel like these words were in my head. And when I really just look at the lyrics or hear the lyrics and I listen to the song, to me, it's them almost crying out a little bit for help, crying out to their father slightly. What I was always envious of the lyrics in this song because they admit "Hey Dad, I miss you." They're reaching out to let him know they're still alive. And I haven't talked to my father in 20 years.
Wow.
And yeah, it'll be 20 years here in probably a few months or whatever. And so I was always envious of that. So to me, I interpret it as them putting an olive branch out there, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's definitely irony in. Is there irony? I don't know. In the song being called Emotionless. I think it's, without diving in because I want to be respectful, I think it's clearly written to Benji and Joel Madden's father. This song, to me, it comes from a place of, I guess, trying to accept that loss in a sense, that the like truly accepting the person will no longer be in your life. And at the same time, that like weird complex emotion of like wanting them to know just how much they've hurt you while also trying to prove that you're okay. And just like all the questions you have in that weird space. You know, look, my dad was on this podcast. I talk to my dad every day. I'm very lucky and very grateful to have like such a good relationship. But I think, you know, I think this song definitely has the potential to relate to anyone who has felt just abandoned or that someone has left them in any sense. Although definitely it seems to have that specific story here.
And again, your interpretation of it is really, I like the optimism of it, really. Do you know what I mean? Because it's hard to like understand emotion, let alone to then write them down and then to create a song around it and for it to translate. And what you're saying is that really the thing I was always envious about this song is it seemed like they were trying to process the emotions in a healthier way than maybe I was doing. And I wish that I could almost get to that point. And it translates to anybody, like you said, who is suffering from trauma. You know, you have to sometimes reach out for help and just, it's cathartic to even just say how you're really feeling. Yeah,
it is for sure. But I want to talk about the title of this song, right? Because kind of similar to you, I think I was always sort of stumped about this. I was like, well, why is it called Emotionless? So from thesaurus.com, emotionless is someone who is unfeeling, undemonstrative. They list synonyms as deadpan, detached, impassive, matter of fact, unemotional, right? And like they're talking about, you know, not feeling hate. Like, I don't hate you, but clearly processing a lot, right? I guess here are two questions. And I don't want to like, you know, we can sort of spoil some things that'll come later on, but like, are they actually emotionless in this song? And why is it called Emotionless? Like, I guess I want to hear, because I have a couple thoughts, but I want to hear your initial reactions first to that question.
I think it's one of the cooler questions that like could be posed here because you're pointing out again, like the irony or just like it contradicts almost a lot of different things, but they're, you know, Good Charlotte, they do things intentionally. Like there's got to be an intention behind this. For me, I feel like it comes down to, we kind of touched on it briefly. I feel like I get this album was early in their career, so maybe they didn't get as much hate for showing vulnerability, but it wasn't so punk to show vulnerability. And in the early 2000s,
punks
this
don't talk about their feelings.
Right. And think about the bands around in the early 2000s, like Newfound Glory, Less Than Jake, Real Big Fish, you know, the Starting Line. Like these bands weren't really diving into like deep emotion and processing of those emotions. So I don't know if it was a way to not get like initial hate because they're almost painting the title of the picture as if like, yo, it's pop punk or punk to not have emotions, but really the song is just full of it. But I don't know, it could just be them, I don't know, just feeling like sometimes emotionless can just be an easier way to go. Sometimes not having
and
a
like
feeling
acknowledging the difficult emotions.
Yep.
So for years and years, like up until, you know, 5 days ago, whatever, when I was making these notes, my interpretation was always that they were trying to prove to their dad, you know, they were trying to prove to the person that they were writing to, as well as writing about, that they were emotionless, that they didn't care anymore. And that was why I took it as being called Emotionless. This got pointed out, I think it was like some of the song meanings comments that I pulled, I want to say. But something I came up in my research for the episode. I'm wondering if they are saying that the person they're writing to is emotionless.
Holy shit. I mean, seriously, like I'm telling you how much this song saved me.
Why did I not think about that?
Holy shit. I mean, that's going to change my, like really, that's going to change the way I hear the song for a little bit. It is.
Right?
That just That really blew my mind. I think you've got to be right. I think you've got to be right, because otherwise it contradicts everything else to not. The song is full of emotion. You've got to be right.
I feel like I feel like that's got to be part of it, right? Right? I feel like that's got to be part of it. I mean, look, a song can have multiple meanings and interpretations for why it's called something, but I feel like that's got to be part of it, at least.
Yeah, and really, I mean, think about it. In any situation where you're like dealing with a friend, a coworker, a family member, like when you just, how lonely does it feel when you're trying to tell somebody how you feel, and either A, it's like they're not listening,
right,
or B, they can't show you any empathy that they too can understand that emotion. I mean, yeah, what a crazy, but
right,
I think accurate explanation of that title.
Right. It never hit me until, 5 days ago.
It's really, I'm going to listen to this after we're done talking, and this song's going to mean a little bit different to me after just like thinking of that title change, like interpretation. Love
that. Briefly, I want to talk about the kind of instrumentation and arrangement of this song. We talked about the diversity, and I think this song is a great example of that. They do have some other slower songs, but this is definitely sandwiched between two very high energy songs. I think the whole song is acoustic guitar. It starts off just the guitar, then you got some drums and some strings coming in. And then in the bridge, you have this very simple, like, ascending piano part that ends on this one super high note, which kills me every time, because it's like, I'm sure someone with a better background in like music theory could explain this a little better, but I hear that and I'm like, well, I'm expecting resolution. I'm expecting the melody to come back down or to repeat, and it just goes like up, up, up. And it's kind of like you're left waiting, which I think is something that's sort of portrayed lyrically in this song too.
Yeah, it's the instrumentation on this is really a lot of where the power comes. I think the placement of this song in, what is it, 13 tracks?
13 out of 14, yeah.
Yeah, it's 13 there. So the album is 14 tracks in length, right, in totality. So, I mean, where else? First of all, let me ask you a question while it's on my mind. Where else could you see Emotionless being placed on this? I can't imagine it being anywhere else because of the vulnerability of it. Like, what song could follow? Moving On makes sense after this.
Right. In a lot of ways, Moving On does make sense after this. They have Hold On as track 8. But Hold On's a little different in that it's not so much personally vulnerable as like a song for the vulnerable people, I guess. And like they have, there's The Story of My Old Man on this record, but that's not really like a vulnerable song. Like it's talking about like personal experiences, but it's not talking about like their feelings. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is like I don't know if I could really see this placed elsewhere on this record.
Yeah, I think it's perfect placement. And again, to your point, talking about like the instrumentation and everything, it's just it's gorgeously done. I mean, this album, actually, re-listening to it all week, really heading into this, I listen to it every couple months, like it pops up and I'm like, oh my God, I love this album. Let me hear it again. I know every lyric, every word, right? But like hearing it again, there's just, again, the diversity on it with the instrumentation, even the tones of the guitar, like on Moving On, the screeching guitars at the very beginning, it's incredible. There's all these arguments also of like emo anthems around like these days on TikTok on like what's the official emo anthem. I feel like no one's giving Good Charlotte an opportunity here. There's like a song called The Anthem, and
And I was just talking about this with my friend Scott from Fly in the Call, and I was like, I could really see TikTok being very useful for me in promotion of the show. I just kind of don't know if I really know exactly how to go about it. But right, for like making TikToks about how the anthem is an emo anthem. Yeah. I mean, you could go down a whole rabbit hole about that, but yeah.
Yeah, but again, I keep going off of these tangents that you told me I was allowed to before we started taping. I do want to say, though, again, on the instrumentation part of Emotionless, it is so different from anything else on this album, period. Yeah. I remember hearing it for the first time, and it just absolutely stopped me in my tracks. I probably didn't even understand the lyrics at first because I was so young and going through a trauma myself. I don't even know if the lyrics resonated at first. It's the music that really pulls you in the build. And like you said, it never resolves ever. And Joel, I believe, is the one who's singing in this. The voice here, Joel's voice is so distinctive. One of the most, I think, distinctive in the music community, like currently, right? Like if you hear his voice, it's Joel.
It's Joel Madden, yeah.
There's something different about his voice in this one. And especially as it goes into the end when he says, "Hey, Dad," again at the very end. It's just really unique approach and pulling off of a song.
Yeah. Well, on that note of his voice and everything, I want to talk about some backstory of this song and some just things they've mentioned about it in interviews. They talked about it a little bit in an interview with the Washington Times. And Joel is saying that, we've grown and that everything's continuing to evolve. There's this really, really wonderful piece, and I've mentioned this piece, y'all. Like, I've mentioned this piece a handful of times. It's from Rolling Stone. It's called "The Polite Punks." It's such a wonderful piece. And anyways, they're talking about how the band isn't afraid to show off its sensitive side on songs such as "Emotionless" and "Story of My Old Man." And here's the quote from Joel. "Even though we might blush when we sing and we might get embarrassed because the songs are so personal, I think it's worth it." Benji adds that growing up definitely sucked, but if it wasn't for all that stuff, we wouldn't have started our band. And I can't even count how many letters I get from kids whose dad left them. That's pretty much the most fulfilling thing you can get.
I mean, it's absolutely like epitomizes why most bands do what they do. I've talked to so many bands. You're really accelerating in your episode count, by the way. So congratulations.
Yes,
I know you eclipsed 50 and everything. I remember those milestones and they're amazing. Keep going.
Oh,
but,
yeah. Thank you.
To bands that I talk to, like ultimately when you ask them at their core, like, why are you doing this? I just talked to Magnolia Park. They're a band down in Florida, and they get a lot of hate. They get put in boxes as to, you're not pop punk for this reason. And I asked them, like, guys, you're getting all this hate in the middle of a pandemic. Why are you still doing this? To like challenge them, like, why are you doing this? Like, articulate it to me. And They nailed it, because there's other people like them that need to see people of color in bands and making it and succeeding and having Kellen Quinn on their tracks and stuff.
That's so sick. Yeah.
Yeah. So Good Charlotte, I can't imagine like anything better being an artist and knowing like that you've helped so many people get through something that, I can say for a fact going through it fucking sucks.
Yeah. I, like I was saying, like I can't relate to that, but I think even as a young person growing up who had in both ways, like a pretty stable family, right? Like I looked at it and I was kind of like, that's got to kind of take a lot to just like talk about this. But also, yeah, there are things that sometimes it's just like, if you wouldn't have had that, you wouldn't have started the band, or you wouldn't have like, if I hadn't been through like everything that I did go through growing up, I wouldn't have gotten into music and become a writer and eventually a podcaster, right? I want to read this quote from an interview in Blender via a fan site. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want to read this portion and talk about like why something like this. I'm sure I read this growing up. I'm sure I read this like when it came out, right? So, they're just talking about the difficulties they had growing up. The article says, however, some benefit has come out of all this. Joel insists that as a direct consequence of their one-parent family status, they became independent and strong. You survive that kind of childhood, hitting rock bottom, having nothing, having no money, and you can survive anything, he says. And like hearing as a teenager going through, teenage stuff, reading things like that was so reassuring for me, right? Like, oh shit, like if they can get through that, like I can get through whatever I'm dealing with. And I can imagine, I'm sure something like that would resonate, with you, just relating directly to the content of the song. If someone else can get through this, maybe I can get through this.
Yeah. And again, that's, I feel like Good Charlotte doesn't get enough credit specifically on this song, because they could have easily written a song that was just destroying their father.
Yeah.
This song is not fueled by hate at all.
Not at all.
And I think, like, when I first heard it as a kid, it pissed me off that this song wasn't fueled by hate, because I still had hate in my heart. And to be honest with you, Molly, like, this song kind of taught me how to move on from that. It taught me how to process this and not have hate. And honestly, having any hate in your heart for whatever reason, whether it's a friend that pissed you off, whether it's a family member, like, it is so toxic, and don't have that. Just don't work these out. It doesn't mean you have to have people in your life, but in my opinion, you have to sort these things out. It's too toxic otherwise. And this song helped me get there. And I think that quote that you're referring to, I do want to even expand slightly.
Yeah.
If you're referring to the one where they're saying, like, Joel insists that as a direct consequence of their one-parent family system, they became more independent, things like that.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot agree with this statement. So, like, single parents, a lot of times single mothers get a lot of hate, right?
They really do. And it's, like, kind of disgusting, honestly.
It's so disgusting. My mom raised, I'm the middle child. Older sister, me, younger brother. All three of us went to college because of my mom. My mom never went to college. She helped my sister went to Penn State. I went to Kent State. My brother went to Teal. And it was because of my mom. She figured out financial aid and all this stuff. She worked 2 jobs. She busted her ass. She's the most impressive woman in the world.
Figuring out, like, college financial aid and stuff is not straightforward.
Oh my God, it's crazy. My day job, I work at a university. I totally, yeah, I teach and I advise students, but it's to the point of what they're saying here. I think more needs to be said about, like, single parents or parents that are in the LGBTQ community or trans or anything. Like, they get so much, like, you can't be it has to be a standard family. Fuck that. Fuck all of that. Because you know what? I might not be the best person in the world, but I survived with my mom being a mother, a father, and my best friend. And so to me, I think that statement's so powerful that, like, just because you have this uphill battle or things are dysfunctional, you can still find some sort of calmness or optimism to move forward.
I think that shows a lot of strength on, your mom's part. It's, look, like, I definitely had a privileged upbringing. I went to a private high school. And even with that, I can say, yeah, applying to college is, like, not an easy process. And it's so complex. And I feel like people don't necessarily even talk about what it actually takes to figure that out, right? Because it's not simple.
It's almost, one has to wonder if it's a gatekeeping tool. And I'm in the industry, it's, you've got to wonder, like, I mean, admission standards have had to evolve because they were marginalizing communities, right?
Well, even stuff like, oh, you got to have all these extracurriculars. Well, like, why did I have extracurriculars? Well, like, in my case, like, I was lucky enough to have a school that had all these resources, right? What about kids that come from schools that don't necessarily have the resources to have arts programs, sports programs? Like, are they just supposed to not be as competitive applicants? Like,
I want to actually mention something very quickly about, like, what we're saying here and how I think the younger generation really is recognizing how fucked up this system is. It's gatekeeping people out of getting education. So in a class I teach, it's really based around freshmen assimilating into college and embracing diversity and things like that. And we had an assignment where they had to pick a wicked problem that exists in the world, right? Like world hunger, racial, racial issues that we're still facing to this day, right? And a lot of students, instead of picking some of these, very important, every issue is important, a lot of these students picked the disparity in higher education and how, to this day, it's just not fair in this country. People don't have a fair shot to get an education, and then it just becomes a lifelong problem, you know?
They don't. And it's, I mean, we could go down a whole rabbit hole about student loans and how predatory those are, and I'm while I am not obviously not glad that you don't have a relationship with your father, I'm glad to know that you had a mom that was able to do everything she did to take care of you and your siblings and provide for you and help you all create like wonderful futures of your own.
And I want to point out one other thing that
Sure.
I think is really important to say about, like, again, just a single mother kind of structure, or two men or two women or two, however, non-binary, however you identify, because I'm all about that kind of stuff, right? I don't want to segregate anybody here. No matter what your system is or who you love or who your partner is, I mean, my fucking God, you can raise children and they can become successful and happy.
Absolutely.
And you can. And to be honest with you, I think this is actually really important. If I honestly feel that if my father didn't leave, I wouldn't be the kind of person I am today. And I feel like I'm an okay person. I look back on who I was before my father left, and like, I feel this indoctrination of toxic masculinity. Like,
really?
I can absolutely see the difference between when I was looking up to my father and emulating him, and when my father left and I started to change and emulate my mother. I respect women so much because of my upbringing, and I don't know how it would be if it wasn't this. I mean, I can't change the way it turned out, but like, I wasn't trending in a good way. I felt, I was young when this happened. It's just, my mother and women in general, like, deserve a lot more fucking credit.
Yeah. I agree. I am so glad that you were able to, it can be hard to kind of look back at like who we were as like teenagers and kind of untangle, well, what was just the act of growing up and what was a specific event or life circumstance that happened. I think something else I just wanted, just while, you had mentioned like LGBT families, just while we're talking about this, I want to say this was a TikTok recently that talked about how like kids of gay or lesbian parents tend to be happier because, first of all, for a same-sex couple to have a child, they face a lot more barriers. So it's like they have to really, really want it. And I was like, oh, like I never actually sat down to think about that, but that makes a lot of sense. And I think everyone has the right to have kids, obviously. But I think just in context, that was like a really cool thing to think about.
And that's, again, to credit this song. Like, that's the power that this one song, to me, I feel has, that it can touch all those communities. Do you know what I mean? And just that statement again, that they said, you can come from a one-parent family like system, and look at Benji and Joel Madden,
Oh my God, yeah. They have Veeps, which just got sold to Live Nation. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. This song is really just so powerful for a million reasons.
Yeah. It definitely, and I like to talk about other Good Charlotte songs that track relates to, how it fits into their discography. They've written many songs about their father, right? Little Things, Complicated on the first record, Story of My Old Man on this record, Predictable, which also is, I think, not necessarily explicitly about a specific person, but about, someone leaving. And then Leech mentions it too on Generation RX.
Wow, I didn't know that. I'll have to listen to that. I haven't given Generation RX a good enough listen to be perfectly honest.
You should give it a shot. Because honestly, when I first heard it, I was like, all right, this is pretty good. And then I came back to it like 6 months later. I came back to it and I was like, oh, like, fuck, this is intense. It's definitely much more like introspective and kind of personal than I think Youth Authority was in that way. It's very, very vulnerable.
I'll also tell you, just while it's popping on my head right now, I revisited the entire discography of Good Charlotte for like the last 2 weeks leading into this, which I think is
that's my goal. Get everyone to listen to their entire discography before they come on the show.
Well, that's how I think it's amazing, right? Because you're driving, I would think a goal of yours is to spread the good word of Good Charlotte,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
And like, damn, like you're getting me back into them. Like I'm realizing like I actually did not listen to Good Morning Revival. I never listened to that album. I never did. I listened to it this week. It's fucking awesome.
It's so good.
It's unreal. It's unreal how good it is. Like it's so different from their other stuff.
Yep.
And so I don't know where we were going with this, but now I saw that I had to tell you that like,
yes, I love that.
That album's so cool.
Well, Angela, before we go into the critical and fan response, I found, and this actually prompted a tweet. I found a worksheet about this song on Teachers Pay Teachers, which is a website that I guess like teachers will kind of share their educational materials, like worksheets and stuff. And I saw this and I was like, wow, there's this like Good Charlotte related worksheet. And so of course I paid the $2.99 plus tax because I was like, we got to do it. So I downloaded it. We're not going to go through the whole quiz because I do want to encourage people that are listening to ultimately buy it, because honestly, I'm sure plenty of people listening to this would totally like want to take the quiz. So I will link this worksheet that you all can buy. I'll read the description and then we'll go through a couple quiz questions. I'm going to quiz you. This is a very powerful song that relates, sadly, to many of our youths whose fathers have walked away and denied themselves a relationship with their children. It speaks of the damage done and the harm, but assures that they survived anyway. And then it includes a 10-question quiz as well as answer key that asks the reader to delve into higher-level interpretive thinking and to create and describe images that the song evokes. All right. So we're going to go into this worksheet.
And by the way, I want to just say how cool you are for a million reasons.
Thank you.
You just advocate so well in so many different ways. You really do. It's impressive because, like, honestly, so many other people probably would have went either not even bought this thing and tried to find a way around buying it, right? To still bring it onto their show and then present it and then not encourage people to buy. Like, you literally went and supported this person who created this, and you're not going to cut them at the knees and do the whole thing here so that people could, I mean, that's just amazing. This attitude needs to be more universal.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And you know what? Honestly, it's like, I believe that if someone is putting their work online, like and you're able to support them, look, like listeners, I have some of you support this show on Anchor and pay a certain amount every month. Part of that money goes towards things like, okay, like, oh, I want to do this, I want to support this. And I hope that people who listen to this show also are all about supporting independent creators.
One other, just on that topic too, that somebody who I'm loving right now is Jer from Skatoon Network.
Yes.
And just Jer does such amazing stuff. And
we gave them a shout out on the episode of the Anthem because like a few days before that was set to go live, Jer put up a cover of the Anthem, which was like so very, very good.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. I didn't know that.
So good.
And Jer just advocates, again, so well to lift others up and everything. And one thing Jer actually said in a live stream that they were doing on TikTok recently, they were wearing some of their Skatoon Network merch. And I commented in there and I said, yo, like, your merch is always so sick. And Jer responded in the live stream and said, yeah, I have a theory. And the theory seems to be working out. You hire talented artists to create your artwork, and then you put it on t-shirts and people will buy it. Yep. And it's such a novel, concept that, like, okay, there's graphic designers and photographers get screwed over the worst, right? Photographers, you shoot, I believe, or used to whenever shows were around, so you probably can relate. They get screwed over so much. Graphic designers, it's always like, oh, can you just make this one for me real quick? It's never quick, anybody. It's never quick. But Jer's mentality is get people to do good work, and it will go from there. And that's just something I see in you, that you like.
Thank you so much.
You lift others up just like that. It's amazing.
I try to. And I think, frankly, that's something that Good Charlotte does and that Benji and Dole do and everything they do. Well, let's go on to this quiz. So we're going to skip around a bit. Question number 1. What is the purpose of him writing this song? A, to say he still hates his dad. B, to ask how the dad feels, C, to let him know their mom is okay, D, to tell them they are moving away.
Wow. I'm going to go, I think B is what I want.
Yes, B is correct.
There we go.
At the end of the song, what feeling is he experiencing? A, hatred, B, joy, C, loneliness, or D, calm?
Wow. Oh my God. It's hard for me to separate how I feel at the end of that song to how I would interpret. Do you know what I mean? I would say calm. D. Is that D? Calm? It's either D or C.
It's C. So the quiz says that the correct answer is C. But I see some calm as well, personally.
I mean, the control of the voice there at the very end when he says, "Hey, Dad," is very, it's like very soothing, calm. You know? Mm-hmm. It is.
Well, okay, so this one's a free response. So there's not a correct answer, but I'm just gonna ask it. I'm gonna ask it because I gotta ask it. This is question 11. Those scars run deep inside these tattooed body, there's things I'll take to my grave. The author mentions his tattooed body for a reason in this song and uses the word scars in the same sentence. List 3 tattoos the author would probably have and why he would choose those particular ones.
Wow, that is an amazing question. First of all, I have no tattoos. Right? I have no tattoos. So I like, it's hard for me to relate to tattoo kind of stuff. But man, a fun note also, by the way, that I'm relating to right here is I wrote a song about my father called Scars Forever Burned in Me. And so I really relate to that scar thing completely. To me, we're thinking of like tattoos that Joel would maybe have that reflect this song.
Yeah.
I would think,
by the way, I don't like have any, I don't know what tattoos he has, but just, so I'm just like, this is a critical thinking, interpretive kind of freeform question.
I keep like, it's probably just because I keep seeing it and it's actually right in front of me, but I keep envisioning like maybe the cardiology heart, to like almost like to bring a full circle kind of thing. I would hope like that this is probably super corny in some ways. Bands get hate when they wear their own shirts, so probably not a lyric from it, but like I would encourage a lyric from it. I'm sure that Joel Madden is not wearing a lyric from his own songs though. And maybe just like some hands, like praying hands, like the emoji,
Benji Madden uses the praying hands emoji a lot. I think Joel uses it sometimes too, but Benji uses it like often. Yeah.
So maybe I could be right.
I think you could be right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about some critical response because it was good. So first we are going to mention, honestly, probably my favorite review of this record. And by that, I mean my favorite to rag on. We have mentioned this review probably every Young and the Hopeless episode so far. Listeners, this is the Pop Matters review of Good Charlotte's The Young and the Hopeless. Emotionless shows a little more depth as vocalist Joel sings an open letter to his long-lost father, but instead of sounding starkly honest, it's layered with more strings, keyboards, and whiny, stained style sentiment. Just a guy and his guitar would have sounded much better.
I can't believe this interpretation. I mean, how can you take vulnerability and this
say
is
it
the
doesn't
best
sound like it, that it doesn't sound starkly honest?
God, it's like how does this person have a job in writing critical level responses to music? I have no clue. And let me ask you actually about, are you saying that this review rags on the entire album, not just on this one particular track? They're like this on all of the tracks. They say stuff like this?
I don't know if they mention every track by name, but like we've mentioned this review just because, frankly, it's, I think, a good example of the negative criticism Good Charlotte's received. But yes, there's, if you read the whole review, it is consistently like this.
It's so wild to me. Not to make this about me or Spinning Thoughts, but I do want to point out something about Spinning Thoughts that like the antithesis of this. Is the number one rule at Spinning Thoughts is we don't write any negative reviews. We've never done it. We never will. We just play by the normal thing that I learned as a kid. If you don't got something nice to say, don't say it at all. I mean, people put too much time, energy, money. They deal with loss to put out music and art for us. If it doesn't resonate with you, fine, just shut up, right? This stuff annoys me with Pop Matters.
Yeah, and you know, I will mention like negative criticism is valid.
It is.
In my experience, like when I ran Circles and Soundwaves for 7 years, look, I wasn't making money from it. None of my contributors were making money. So like, yeah, we ran a couple negative reviews, but like really it was also kind of like on a base level, like I'm not making money. So like I'm going to write about something I enjoy. Right.
And that's the theory actually is, you know, if someone's on my team is going to write something hateful or and there's a difference between hateful and criticizing, by the way. And I think that this is more on the lines of like hateful, like they're not saying anything that's like derogatory, I guess, but it's still just like how can you be a critic and not find something uplifting or meaningful in Emotionless?
Right.
It's just, to me, it's crazy. But I agree that constructive criticism is absolutely valid. That's just not what we're seeing here.
Yeah. I would go through that with like Circles and Soundwaves contributors of like, hey, like criticism is good, but like we don't write that. And like a couple times I did have to like tell someone like, hey, I'm removing this statement from your review because that's just like not the kind of thing we want to do here.
Yeah. And you know, the truth really is, people, whether you're the smallest blog or you just started or you've been doing this forever and you have 1 million some followers, people, when they read your stuff, they stumble upon it or hear it or they listen. You know, people will listen. And if it's the first time they've ever heard what you're talking about, you're going to shape them in a wrong way. You're going to give them the wrong kind of impression. I mean, if somebody came across Good Charlotte for the first time and read this Pop Matters thing, is that reflective of the band?
They would never listen.
Exactly, because there's no balance. To me, it's crazy. There's a lack of balance in this, and it's fun. I feel like this epitomizes a lot of Good Charlotte. Like, they have not gotten the kind of love that they deserve. I mean, they're a staple in this community. They're still doing it. They went on hiatus, came back, didn't get the kind of love that MCR got. You know?
Yeah. Well, there are some reviews that did enjoy this song, so we'll read some of these. Yeah. So, All Music gave it a shout out as a shoegazing ballad with a clever orchestral backdrop that stands as a soul moment of truth.
I really like the shoegazing description there because I definitely didn't feel that at first, and as I heard that approach,
I can see it though. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Exactly. I didn't at first, but now I see it. I really thought that was a cool way to break that one down.
Yeah. Alt Press gave it a nice shout out. This article is by Stephen Lofton. Really, the article is like talking about how this made them pop punk icons. Really, really wonderful article. I'm pretty sure I've referred to it a few other times. And he says that, you know, directly approaching the absence of their father growing up in Emotionless felt incredibly vulnerable. And this is like my favorite. This is one of my favorite things that's been written about them because it's so true. The people Good Charlotte are for aren't the critics. They're for the people who needed and still need a voice.
It's profound. You know,
how much better could you have said it? You know,
you can't. And here's something else about that statement on Good Charlotte. Bands today live by this motto, or a lot of them are starting to. We're trying to get rid of the toxic culture that did and does still exist in this community. Yeah. And bands now like Pink Shift, Action Adventure, right? Magnolia
Action Adventure for sure, yeah.
They have a message. They have a message and they have a platform and they're using it. Back in the early 2000s, that wasn't popular to do because everything was rooted in misogyny and just like, you know, white dudes in pop punk bands, right? Yeah. So for Good Charlotte to take this kind of approach before their peers were ever doing it and their peers still aren't doing it, you know, it's really impressive. Yeah.
Well, Plugged In, the publication from Focus on the Family, listed this under pro-social content. They said that it's intended as a song of forgiveness, so they gave it the thumbs up. Rate Your Music user Beta Off Dead talks about how story of my old man is filled with what seems like hate, but never truly seems to break out of the song. But this person says that the first time they heard Emotionless, they felt shivers down their spine because you can actually feel what they feel. That it's not so much anger about, but pain. What I think is true.
It is so true. Honestly, I have cried to this song more than I haven't. And I haven't listened to this song, honestly, maybe in over a year or so before leading into this. And I've been listening to it a few times this week. And it's, it's still hard for me to even hear it. There's just so much emotion and Emotionless.
Yeah. No, I get that. And there's plenty of songs that I've had that I'm like, I love this song. I relate to it so much, but I can't listen to it for a while.
It's the power of music. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's like, I can still say like, oh, that's like one of my favorite songs because of how it's impacted me. But sometimes it's just like a lot and it's too much and it brings you back. And,
sometimes this could be a whole podcast in itself, talking about how people use music to either exacerbate a mood or to get out of one.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot of debate here where like, you get, quote unquote emo kids or whatever. And there's kids, or people who have trauma and sadness and aren't emo. Right. But like you almost sometimes get down these rabbit holes where like you're sad and you just listen to sad, aesthetic music and you keep going down this road. And then there's others who will argue like, yo, no, we got to get some ska going for you now. Or we got to get like, something a little bit more poppy to get you out of the mood. It's an interesting kind of dichotomy, I guess.
Yeah. And people, and this pertains to any kind of loss, whether that's a death, a breakup, a family member or parent that's, left and they're no longer in your life. You go through stages of grief, right? And, some people say 5 stages, some people say 7 stages. And there's arguments over like whether they are distinct and whether they have to be in a certain order. But, the point is there are stages to loss and processing anything. And I think it really depends on like what stage you're kind of in that impacts what you need. And as well as like your individual personality and how you process and express things. Right. But I think that's why I appreciate that they have, multiple songs about the same situations, because it's like, well, you can kind of hit the different feelings and timelines that need to be expressed and communicated.
Yeah. And again, they were doing this kind of stuff, I think, before their peers were doing it, ahead of their time. Yeah. And, they deserve a lot of credit and they don't always really get it.
Yeah. Well, I want to read some fan comments on YouTube first. I won't go into all of these in detail, but there were a lot of people commenting. So this was comments on a fan upload of the song. A lot of people were commenting, just saying, hey, Dad, and then sharing their own stories, which I thought was really sweet. Miss KT said, everyone in these comments who relates to this song, please come hug me.
Yeah, that offer stands on my end, too. If anybody needs a hug from this kind of stuff, I'm here to talk I need a hug, too, sometimes.
Yeah. And then Taylor Lauren said, such a beautifully tragic song, powerful words, respect to them for being able to express their problems so openly.
It's interesting that you're getting these comments from YouTube and they're not all so hateful, because YouTube is so notorious for being so hateful.
Yeah, YouTube comments can be something. Song meetings too. We're going to read some song meetings comments. And since I've been doing this podcast, I go on like every week and I pull up some song meetings comments. And, at the time, I remember that being like a very volatile place for Good Charlotte songs. There's like one user here that will mention that has come up a few times because they're like always leaving like negative comments, like bizarrely negative comments. So this user, this is X bright_eyes X. And what I just to preface it, it's like, this person has left many negative comments on Good Charlotte songs on song meetings that people will argue over. And it's just weird to me because it's like, how much time have you put into this band that you supposedly hate? Anyway, this person says, what, you guys like this crap? The first CD I thought was okay somewhat, but do not, under any circumstances, buy this CD. It's the epitome of worthless trash and should be thrown away before it even hits the shelves. Okay.
Yeah, like they even say this whole CD encompasses everything I hate about bad music.
Yeah. I mean, like, you're allowed to have that opinion, but what's going on in your own life that you feel the need to so continuously express that?
Yeah, I mean, when I see people that lean into hate and just, you gotta worry about them a little bit. Like, you really, I mean that, like, in sincerity, like, you really do have to worry about them, because life shouldn't be like this, like, for this person, you know, or for you listening. Like, it shouldn't be that volatile or toxic. Like, come on, like, find something good to say.
Right.
But it, you know, it goes to the point that music is interpretive, and that it is, you know, based on your construct and your environment and things like that. But it just seems like Good Charlotte gets so much of this, and I think it is because they hit success very quickly. They got put into a box, which just is a perpetual issue in the music community.
And they made themselves vulnerable, right?
Yep.
But there are a lot of people who do like this song.
Yes.
I Heart GC says, I love when at the end he like coons, hey dad, it's really nice. K-Rock mentioned the line about the tattooed body. The scars run deep inside these tattooed body. X Chick Vicious X, which I don't know if you know this, Angelo, but Benji's nickname was Kid Vicious after Sid Vicious.
I didn't.
Yeah, so it was like a thing that like, this was like a popular username for girls and young women that were GC fans, was something about Chick Vicious. If you were like a Benji Madden fan. I definitely didn't have any kind of Chick Vicious.
It's almost like standing before standing happened, you know?
Right. Anyway, X Chick Vicious X says, this song really gets to me. It's probably my favorite song off their new CD. It makes me realize that my life really isn't that bad, and that at least I know my father, even if he doesn't ask sometimes. Last one I'll read, Fate Works Both Ways 88. I normally don't like Good Charlotte. I find them to be posers and sellouts, but this is the only song I really, really like. Maybe it's because my dad left this year. I relate to the song so much, and I cry almost every time I hear it.
That actually, you know, I was laughing at the beginning of what they were saying, but I actually got like really mad respect for that. Look, you don't listen to Good Charlotte, but still, that's the power of this song, is you could say you don't normally listen to them and find a connection. That's the power. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. Well, Angelo, as we wrap this up, I'd like to ask people, how has Emotionless held up for you over time?
I mean, I'm definitely going to be biased because of just, again, this song saved my life. This song is actually, it just keeps getting better and better and better for me. And it's probably because I don't listen to it all the time, as we talked about. Like, sometimes these songs of vulnerability make you feel vulnerable. And sometimes I really don't want to go into this headspace, you know?
Yeah, I totally get that.
After 20 years, like, you know, I've become able to go there and it be okay. You know, this song helped me be okay. I never really took the advice of this song. It's not like they were given advice in this song, I don't think, but to me, the advice was like, listen to them and put an olive branch out, or listen to them. And like, I mean, I haven't spoken to my father in 20 years. Like, the dude may not know that I'm still here. I don't know if he is, you know, it always made me wonder, like, hey, should I just reach out and just let him know, like, what the fuck I'm doing these days? But like, I feel like I'd be doing it out of spite or hate, and I'm over the hate. Because of Good Charlotte, I'm over the hate. So to answer the question, this song is not just held up over time for me. It continues to impact me and inspire me and have me move forward today. And there's nothing that sounds like a time period in this one. It does. Some of those other songs on this album, you could tell that it was written in the early 2000s. You don't hear that on this. So it can still hit people hard today without it being put in a box.
Yeah. Something I just want to mention as you talk about, like, you know, the idea of extending an olive branch or not. And I feel like I try to always advocate for it. And this goes to like, whether it's a parent, a relationship, an old friend. I just personally, I feel like people the past few years will just really romanticize like reaching out and mending fences. And frankly, I just want to be clear, it is completely okay, like, to never talk to that person again. Ever, ever, ever in your life. And I have, there's like one particular person that I think about and a couple others, you know what I mean? That I'm just like, I will never talk to that person again. If that person were to reach out to me, I would not answer. And I think that, I'm sure you've heard this, the idea that like forgiveness isn't about them, it's about you and your own ability to come to peace with something. And it doesn't mean you're like okay with what happened so much as you're like, I'm allowing myself, and I speak like from my own experiences that I've had, you're allowing yourself to kind of process it and move on to the next stage and be like, this happened, this impacted me. That wound is never not going to be there, but I can move on. I'm okay.
I can't tell you how many times, and I don't talk about this often, but especially like with family or friends, I'll always get people that are like, oh my God, you haven't talked to your father in 20 years. Like, shouldn't you like fix that? Like, shouldn't, and I, as you were starting to speak, I was like, wow, there's no way she's going to go there. And thankfully, you didn't, because that's just you are all about, from what I can gather of knowing you since 2017 and being friends on social media and finally getting to talk like this.
I know.
Is, lifting others up and letting their experiences be their experiences. Yes. I think that's so important. And look, to those listening, like, you just have to do what feels right for you. I have gotten so much hate for being in the position that I am today, like with where I'm at with my father, to where it makes me nervous to even talk about him, because usually people come at me and tell me, well, he's your father, shouldn't you be talking to him? And Molly, I can't tell you how much I love you for being that, like the opposite of that. And I would just encourage everybody to just process things the way that it feels right for you. Just like Molly, what you're saying, like, you don't have to do anything that you don't feel is right for you.
Exactly. And if, it's okay to mend fences if that's what you feel like is right to you in your heart. And I've had like friends that I lost touch with that like at one point I was like really upset about. And then there were a couple of people that like I reached out to during a couple months into the pandemic, because I was like, we don't really talk anymore. We're not close, but like I want them to know that I want to know if they're okay, right? But there are definitely people that like, if they were to like something on Twitter, I would block their ass. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it's like you really have to just do what's right for you, and that's something I believe in, and that's something I try to do with this show. I'm sure you've gathered, right? Is that like, it's about sharing history of the song, it's about sharing my own experiences, but like the reason I bring guests on is so that they can share their own stories. And I think we all, anyone who likes Good Charlotte, anyone who's listening to this show, probably we have something in common, but I hope anyone who's listening understands, like, this is not about me telling anyone how they should feel, and I don't want that to be what it is so much as like, hey, maybe if you have something you want to talk about, like, you will have all the freedom in the world to talk about like whatever you're comfortable with here.
There's a lot of inspiration to get from you, Molly. I mean, seriously, your approach to how you do this podcast is awesome, like really awesome. I was diving into this more and more and checking you and your growth and stuff. I mean, you've only been doing this for what, a year, maybe?
Yeah, not quite a year. Yeah, this will be actually about a year when this comes out. Yeah.
Just so, you should be so proud, and the community that you're building. I mean, I'm seeing it. Emo podcast, I know you guys like link up. I think they're fantastic. Like they're doing, they do stuff that's powerful, and that's what we're seeing here. Bands are doing this, where bands are deciding like, look, there's a lot of hate out here, and we're going to stick to the crew that isn't hateful, and let's build up that community. You're doing the same thing, and we're trying to do the same thing at Spinning Thoughts. And man, what a band to build a community around, though. Good Charlotte. I mean, one excellent band. Yep, got to do it.
Well, thank you so much for that, Angela. That means a lot, and just having also just followed your show to get it from, getting it in the early stages to getting on Adobe and everything has been just such a pleasure to see that all unfolds. And I'm so glad to hear that like you got to have essentially your number one guest on the show. That's incredible.
Kenny Vasoli was 100% without question. Like it's so silly, but like I love the Beatles. Paul McCartney's still alive today.
I don't think Paul McCartney. I mean, that'd be sick. I don't think he's not really the fit of Spinning Thoughts. I don't think.
No, he's definitely not. He might get down with some of the hippie vibes, like with the share music, spread love kind of thing.
Totally.
Maybe he'll relate back to the love of the '60s there. But like the funny thing, truly is that me loving the Beatles, I would rather have talked to Kenny Vasoli, regardless of the if it blended or not, over Paul McCartney. Yeah, so it is. Yeah. That's the magic. And listen, Molly, you're an example of this too. Anybody, like, just go do what you love, and you'll get to have some amazing experiences. Like, doing this is a lot of work, but I never would have gotten this opportunity to talk to you and all the other people that I get to interact with.
And the last thing I will say on that kind of note, because we have a few more closing questions, is like, sometimes doing what you love is literally as simple as doing what you love. Because if you would have told 12-year-old Molly that at 29 she would be doing a podcast about Good Charlotte, 12-year-old Molly would have been like, that sounds exactly right. So like, sometimes it really is that simple.
But Molly, from looking at like your evolution and stuff, it like you said, you're 29 here. It didn't just happen overnight. Sometimes you deviate from the path. You even took a hiatus, I think, in the music world for a minute there from writing or something. So I mean, sometimes you have to like walk away to an extent, recalibrate, figure out your passions, and dive in again. I mean, you really are an inspiration. People need to be paying attention.
Thank you. Oh, that's so sweet. Well, thank you so much, Angelo. I'm so pleased to hear everything you said. Something I'd like to ask people to close is, what has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed?
So what I'm about to say hasn't changed. So I'll just answer the last question first. What I'm about to say has not changed. Good Charlotte gave me the confidence to be myself, to wear, tight jeans and get made fun of in high school. I played on the football team. I played on the football team. I got made fun of in high school all the time because here I am playing on the football team. I had long hair with beeswax in it, huge gauges that were bigger than what I have in today, a labret. I mean, here I am getting knocked around. I played in bands. Everybody made fun of me, but Good Charlotte made me feel, seriously, Good Charlotte with the Liberty spikes, with the Dickie shorts.
And they were also like on the baseball team. Like
exactly. They showed that, like, look, you can be vulnerable. You can still, be into athletics. Like, sometimes people feel like because you like music, you can't like something else, or because you play football or play sports, you can't also be creative or something. The boxes are bullshit. And what I think Good Charlotte proved in the early 2000s, when everybody was in boxes, when boxes was cool and people were still trying to hold on to these box ideas, Good Charlotte showed, fuck boxes. We're gonna break out of it. And that to me has not changed and will be something I love about Good Charlotte until I stop listening to music.
I love that. Yeah. Well, do you have any last words about Emotionless, about Good Charlotte, about Spinning Thoughts, or about yourself?
Oh, I mean, I'm just so grateful for this song. There's no song that has ever impacted me like this, no question. The next song I would say would probably be In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida by Iron Butterfly. That's a band from the early 60s. They have that song. It's like 18 minutes long. It's the first song I ever heard on a vinyl record, and now I have, if Molly, if you could see it, over 500 some records.
I love that. That's very impressive. Yeah.
So other than In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida from the classic band Iron Butterfly, which, by the way, fun note, my band that is on a probably indefinite hiatus, the Even 3, we opened for Iron Butterfly. We're a punk thrash kind of band. We opened for Iron Butterfly, and it was just a goal of mine. Do what you want, people. Go and chase your dreams. But Molly, I actually want to end it on just like thanking you for having me on here, because I don't know, this has been one of the most needed things that I've ever done. And it's really because, one, I've never really been on anybody else's podcast. So it's just flattering to be. I've done 200 plus episodes. I'm always interviewing other people. I'm honored and flattered to be on yours. So thank you for that. And really, I just want to thank you because I didn't realize how much I needed to go back and just reevaluate what this song meant to me and to break down some of these feelings. And I feel like really cathartic after talking to you, and like it was almost like a therapy session. So I want to thank you because it really, and I hope that you're okay because I know that we're talking about some heavy stuff too. And so I hope that, that's fine with you, but I appreciate you so much.
No, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you enjoyed this experience. And I'm so, because I know that there's going to be other people that listen to this and that are going to relate to a lot of what you had to say as well, I'm sure. So thank you. And I've long listened to Spinning Thoughts, and I'm like, oh my God, like he's doing so much cool stuff. Like, how can I connect with him? So I'm so happy we got to do this.
Absolutely. And you've been a supporter of Spinning Thoughts seriously since the beginning.
Yeah, like 4 years.
Yeah, we're in year 4. I mean, you're one of I remember the people from like year 1. I really do.
Oh my God. Yeah. I remember the first people that messaged me about circles and sound waves 10 years ago. Yeah.
You'll always, like, those people are so important. And so, like, that's a message also to listeners. Be an early adopter for podcasters, for artists, for graphic designers, for bands. Like, go listen and support your local bands, because you know what? It is really fucking cool when you feel that community grow and you can say, I was part of that, and they'll remember you.
Absolutely will remember you.
I remember all these people that have helped bring us up. And funny note to even say, like, we just brought on a new contributor, Ray Moore, who is based out of Columbus, Ohio, has written for many other publications in the past. He is somebody who supported us in year 1. And it's just so fucking full circle to bring him on to this team now. It's amazing.
I love that. Well, Angelo, we do the Generation GC and Friends Spotify playlist. So I'm going to add Emotionless. I'm going to add the Vitamin String Quartet version. And I would love to add a recommendation from you. So anything you're listening to lately that's not Good Charlotte.
100%. I wrote down, honestly, before this, about 10 songs that I thought that I should recommend, but there's only one that what's that?
Okay.
There's only one, though. To me, it is the obvious standout choice. So there's this band that I just recently stumbled on. I just bought their vinyl for their brand new album that just dropped on February the 19th. Their album is titled Better Medicine. The band is The Best of the Worst. They are based out of New Jersey. They're a ska core band. So they have like ska like elements and do breakdowns. Nasty. And
so, wait, where in New Jersey are they from?
I don't know, because I'm in Pittsburgh, so I didn't dive that deep. But to me, Jersey's just like one little state, and there's nothing else to it. I know, no hate at all. But the song that I think should be on, and the entire album is amazing. I recommend everybody go check it out. It is called Rotten Dichotomy. And this band is so epic because they call out people in their songs for being hateful, racist, or for putting people down. And I just love the message of this band, and the diversity that they have in their music is wild. I mean, ska with breakdowns, people. It's amazing. So good.
I love that. I just Googled them, by the way, and it didn't, like, their Bandcamp and Facebook just say New Jersey. They don't say where in New Jersey. But I'll add that, and I will add Inagata to Vita, because, we gotta.
It's gonna eat up 18 minutes of people's lives, but it's a hell of a song.
Right.
They have a radio-friendly version of it, too.
I'll probably put that on.
Yeah.
Well, Angelo, this has been so fantastic. Where can people keep up with you and Spinning Thoughts?
I appreciate having the opportunity to just share this information. I would love for anybody to come and check out what we do and support what we do. Everything's free, by the way, free music content. We do take donations to help support, similar to the approach that Molly does here. We're also on Anchor. And to be honest, Molly, I'm going to give you a little shout out. I saw you were on Anchor and I said, what the hell is this about? So I joined Anchor. And it's really, really freaking cool. But you can check out Spinning Thoughts. Our website is thespinningthoughts.com. And we're on literally every social media at Spin Thoughts. We have Linktree and all that kind of stuff where we put all of our different links.
Perfect. Yeah. And listeners, I know I mention and, suggest that anyone support this show. But hey, if you like what Angelo's saying here, if you like Spinning Thoughts, I very much encourage you to support Spinning Thoughts as well. Angelo, thank you so much for coming on the show. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. This has been episode 59 on Emotionless. Last week, we talked about Seasons from Good Charlotte. Next week, we'll be talking about a song from The Chronicles of Life and Death. My name is Molly Huddleston. I've been your host. You can follow Generation GC at Generation GC Pod, POD, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can also follow me, Molly, at M Huddleston on Twitter and Instagram. I also just made a Reddit account, Generation GC Pod. Haven't used that a whole lot yet, but interact. I don't know. Interact. Let's hang out on Reddit too. Please make sure to follow, subscribe to Generation GC wherever you listen, rate, review, and please tell your friends.